Good evening, Chris McLaughlin, City Council candidate, Katie Porter supporter. I just went to City Council tonight and I missed the first section, so I was going to do this in front of City Council, but well, I got there late and did the other one, the second period, so here I am at home. You might hear some background noise from my dog or kids. But what I wanted to talk about is what our city has trouble talking about, which is one of the main reasons I'm running for city council, is that their scope of what they deal with is way too narrow. And they basically don't want to touch anything controversial, anything at all political, what most people consider political. It's not even a part. They're like tonight's agenda is a perfect example. We talked about synchronizing streetlights. I talked about resurfacing some roads and doing some construction on the bridge, and that was it. You know, that was like the two new business items. The consent calendar passed. They pulled out one thing, talking to the city engineer about something. That was it. Meeting, whole thing lasts about an hour, and that includes Bobby Cox making some comments, me making some comments, and Sean Gordon at the end, talking about traffic signals. So there's 9 minutes right there, public comments. Whole meeting was still about an hour. So I look at these things and I think, why does our city ignore the major issues affecting society, if not our city? Is that where the camera is? Right there? Okay. I'm trying to look at the camera more. Why does our city not address, Brett Kavanaugh getting on the Supreme Court? Why don't we talk about sexual assault, teenage alcoholism, male, toxicity, toxic masculinity? That's not something facing our teens. That's not something facing our community, people's marriages, everything. There's not women walking around who've never told their story, that probably never will after the way Dr. Ford's been treated. So why don't we talk about these issues? So I want to call this, how do you talk to your city about Brett Kavanaugh? If you're on city council, how do you approach this? What's the purpose? How do you acknowledge what's happening without wasting a lot of time trying to come up with solutions? But just, be supportive, acknowledge what's happening. I think one of the problems is they try to look at where can we dump any sort of problem on? So let's say you have somebody have an incident like Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, some teenager at a party getting sexually assaulted. They either think that's a law enforcement matter, if it's, to be treated criminally. If it happens at a school, it's, a school problem. Happens in someone's house, well, that's like a private matter between whoever the host was. Happens in the park or something, well, that's a Sam Lark thing. They run the parks. They basically look for who can we blame to deal with anything if anything comes up, so we don't have to deal with anything. That's kind of my impression. This is how I would deal with it. First of all, there's what Brett Kavanaugh should have said. Given the allegations, I read a couple things. It was really good. It was I couldn't find the right meme, but it basically said, look, I don't remember the incident. I used to drink all the time. I don't remember everything. But, I'm sorry for what happened. I apologize. I feel terrible that, these things happen, that you're coming forward. And that's what it is. Investigate what happened. Believe the survivors. There's no rush to get confirmed. That would have been the appropriate stepping off point to say, okay, well, let's look at these allegations. Act like you've reformed. Don't chew out the senators. That would have been reasonable. It would have been much more acceptable. That would have helped survivors come forward. We can talk about it as a country. There'd be all these political people angry. They just want to confirm them, and people that just don't want to confirm them. But that would have been a much better process. So how do we reflect that as a city? Well, we're basically doing the Brett Kavanaugh thing, which is pretend it doesn't exist. Not our problem. Don't want to get in the way of progress and efficiency. So I think this is what I would do. If I was on city council, this is how I would approach this. First of all, someone, what do you call it? Register the domain brettkavanaugh.com. And let me just read it. It says, we believe survivors. It talks about Brett Kavanaugh getting confirmed. It says, to put a national focus on the issue of sexual assault, how we as a country can and should do to prevent it, to support those that experienced it. This past month, thousands of survivors come forward to tell their stories. We applaud your bravery. We believe you. And if you're seeking additional resources, these groups can offer assistance. And then it has a bunch of things where you can go if you've been a victim, if you have questions, where to go. There's something called the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. Offers on-the-ground resources in cities across the country to support victims of sexual assault, hold offenders accountable, and increase the community safety. End Rape on Campus offers students who are victims of sexual assault the care and resources they need through a robust network of on-campus support services. And these are all linked on the website. If you go to brettkavanaugh.com, that's genius. Just right there, his name is on the internet. Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. RAIN operates a national sexual hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE, that connects callers to trained staff members from a sexual assault service provider in their area. So these are the kind of resources our city has locally. I'm sure the Orange County has resources, or Orange County Sheriff's Department has a tip line. That's the kind of reaction our town should have when something like this happens, that everyone's talking about and city council's ignoring. And that's just one issue lately that blew up on the news completely. But in general, it's the same approach they take to all these big issues I see facing our town. Homelessness, people worried about the demise of retail, anything to do with marijuana. They definitely don't want to talk about that. Anything with climate control, climate change. Brad's really good about doing the zero trash thing. I think personally he's pretty liberal on climate change. A lot of Californians are, even conservative Californians, obviously recognize the natural beauty of California, the resources that is the coast and the good weather. We don't want spoiled beaches like Florida. We don't want, even more drought. So I think in California they recognize the climate change impact more than the rest of the world, or more than the rest of the country. So even a lot of conservative people are a little more reasonable about climate change. We don't talk about that at all here. We don't want to sign on to the Paris Accords. Brad listed all the things he does that are, climate sensitive locally, but he can't officially embrace the Paris Climate Accords because obviously that's like a Democratic talking point. It's something Obama did. And so these days, the Republicans are trying to undo everything Obama did. So yeah, we don't talk about it. Nothing's officially going to get passed. And they do that under the guise of like, well, we're not forced to deal with that. It could cost money, so let's just pretend it doesn't exist. Anyway, so that's my advice on how we deal with tough problems. At the end of the meeting, there's like an open comments from any city council member. Usually they have none. Every once in a while they close the meeting in honor of someone who died. Sometimes they make a special announcement like so-and-so had her 90th birthday or whatever. And to me, if I was on city council, I would use that period to say, well, if no one else is going to mention it, here's where you can go if you are a victim of sexual assault and need someone to talk to. If you can't talk to your parents, you don't want to talk to your clergy, you're afraid to talk to your teachers, talk to a stranger who can give you advice on how to proceed. So anyway, this was like 9 minutes almost. You only get 3 minutes every time in city council. So that's kind of hard. I got a lot to say, so it's hard for me to boil it down to 3 minutes. I obviously had a lot to say on a lot of topics. So I might do some more of these little YouTubes and then put that on my campaign website. This is what I have to say about this. This is what I have to say about this. And then maybe a link to the YouTube. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Last day to register to vote is October 22nd. Election day is November 6th. So get out there and register. Make sure you're up to date. And get out there and vote. Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye.